Well, welcome to the recording for week 5 of game design. And week 5 you can see is February 4th through 10th. So now that we're in week 5, we're essentially halfway through the class. So if you haven't earned about 300 points up to date, or actually about 250, then you need to really get on it and start getting some work submitted. A couple of reminders: the assignment explanations. I have right here the assignments that I think are a challenge for students. I explain those right here. Index of course recordings. You can find all the recordings right in there for all the units. All right, week 5. In week 5 we're getting into the gameplay unit, the GP unit. And as usual, you'll watch this lesson recording that you're doing now. You'll do the Class Connect write-up. But also this week you have a My Finishing Plan assignment, which is a grade 8 assignment. I'm going to go ahead and fix the spelling on that. But on My Finishing Plan, just like you had in the beginning your learning plan, in My Finishing Plan you're going to think about and tell me what you need to do or what you plan to do for the rest of the block to get the grade you want. So that's the finishing plan you're going to turn in. That's worth 50 points. That's an easy 50 points. Then the gameplay unit, there are only 2 sections to this. So section A, it has a discussion, but you're going to skip that. And then in section B, you have an assignment, the GP implementation of game mechanics assignment. Then you also have a quiz in this unit. So this unit is fairly short, so it might give you a chance to catch up on old work. So let's go ahead and jump right into the gameplay unit. Here we go. And the gameplay is what it connects people to the games. It's the actual connections, the hands-on component, the rules of the games, and those types of things. So it's more, it goes beyond just what the game is. So what we'll do in this unit, we'll look at some gameplay constraints, meaning the ideas around gameplay and what are the things that gameplay really is. Reason for gameplay rules, look at level designing and attempting new levels, think what new levels are for games, level designing in gameplay, and finally different level techniques. So fairly short unit. Now, as far as the grading, the fuzzy logic discussion you're not going to do, but you do have the assignments, the storyboard assignment, and then the quiz, gameplay structure, and a game mechanics assignment. And here's just a warm-up to get you, ready for the unit. A brief comparison between gameplay in a sports game and the same as the reality on a sports field. How are they the same? How are they different? So you don't need to write that down, but just think about it. And it gets you thinking about what gameplay actually is. Okay, jumping into section A. And of course, before we do this, let's go to the GP Class Connect write-up. Okay, what do the terms gameplay mechanics and gameplay describe? And what is one big challenge in gameplay mechanics today? So gameplay, you could see, as it says from the outside, it could be all fun and entertainment. But really gameplay is the challenge of making the game more interesting to the people and using the game mechanics and the rules to make the game work properly for the user. And in this section we're going to look at gameplay constraints and then also look at some gameplay rules. So game mechanics and gameplay, they're terms used to describe the process that constitute different elements of interactivity in games. So this is what gameplay and game mechanics are, the processes that provide the different elements of interactivity in a game. So as we go through this, you want to think about that. How is game mechanics, the mechanics of how the game runs, how does it affect the interactivity of the game? You can see it talks a little bit about the mechanics, the characters, the types of environments, the choices and directions that make the game more exciting. So right there, that was the answer to that first Class Connect write-up question. Then as we start looking more about this talks about the gameplay constraints and a little bit about artificial intelligence. Now you can do 2 things here. You can listen to the narrator talk about this, or you can just read it down below. But it starts talking about early games like Pac-Man. And Pac-Man, of course, it was just some simple mathematics and just made the Pac-Man creature run around and do whatever you wanted it to do. So that was pretty simple, wasn't it? So the mechanics of Pac-Man were really simple, but it still pulled you in. It still made people interested in playing Pac-Man. Now there's artificial intelligence. And that's where you want people to start thinking more about games and making more decisions as to not just what directions people are going, but strategies to complete the game, strategies to make the game, or strategies to help themselves be successful in games. So as it starts talking down here, when you watch a movie, you see the facial expressions and body language of the actors, and now of course games are starting to do that, aren't they? So let's go back to the Class Connect write-up and see if we had a question here. So what is one big challenge in game mechanics today? So we start looking down here, it starts talking about more about reality games and things like that. So the game mechanics today, the challenge is to make games as realistic as possible. That's the greatest challenge. And we're seeing it more and more in a lot of the military style games and the first shooter games. How realistic the facial expressions are when people talk. Their mouths really move with the real word motion. But this is the big challenge today, is make games as realistic as possible. Okay, page 5, gameplay constraints. And starts talking about artificial intelligence and the way that is used in gameplay. And let me go back to the write-up, see if we have any questions on page 5. No, we don't have another question until page 8. So today, thanks to artificial intelligence called AI, the game not only rely on the player's reflexes and strategies, but also on the element of stealth, meaning how the player moves about the game and how the characters move about the game. So really there's intelligence built into the games these days. And one of the challenges is with artificial intelligence growing, then the game environments have to really grow and the game mechanics need to grow within the environments. Some reasoning rules. So this talks about some gameplay rules. So you can listen to this by hitting start, or you can read through it, but you want to understand some of the basic rules of games. So there's turn-based rules. You can read what that is. So that would be rules for first player's turn, second player's turn. Action points, those make certain rules for the game. Auction or bidding, then you can get you can buy points, and rules change and things like that. So you can see all about different rules in games. In page 7, a little activity you can play, see how well you can do on that, a word activity. Hey, role playing. So again, we're still in game mechanics and rules, and we're talking about role playing. And as it says at the top, let me scroll up to that. Gameplay rules control a gamer the moment he assumes the role of the character. The gameplay environment is built around the character, and the character, of course, is the building blocks of the game. And of course, there are single player, multiplayer. In the gameplay rules, you have the single player versus the game itself, the game interface against the artificial intelligence. Multiplayer would be a player against other players. And gameplay rules, you see right here, are the most important factor in the degree of interactivity in gameplay. So the gameplay rules, or the way the rules are set up for the game to be played, is the most important factor for interactivity in a game. And I think that's one of the questions. What is the most important factor for interactivity in a game? Just talked about it. The next question, simple logic, fuzzy logic different, and what is game prototype? So we'll remember those as we go along. Different rules to achieve games, or achieve goals in a game. So of course, players, as they go through, the reason you play a game is to reach certain goals. So some of the ways you do it is loss avoidance, meaning If you don't, you keep your lives, you don't lose, then of course you can get closer to your goals. Puzzle guessing is another way, and that uses different types of logic, like fuzzy logic. Races, so racing games. It says, racing games might seem like the simplest form of game mechanics, but they're really much more complex, especially in these days, these types of games. Territory control, you've probably played strategy games where you try to take over territories and stuff. Then structure building, so some games where you build things like Tetris, it uses logic as you start building levels in Tetris. So these are just some of the rules that allow you to achieve certain goals. A fuzzy logic. Well, in the basic logic, either something is true or something is false. So that's called simple logic. So in simple logic, say you're in a game and you're going down a path, then you either choose to go to the right or you choose to go to the left when you come to a Y in the road. Well, that's simple logic. It's either yes, you go to the right, or no, and then you go to the left. So it's very simple. But fuzzy logic is different. Fuzzy logic is more than just true or false, but there are degrees of true or false. So it's almost like when you tell a little white lie or something. A white lie might have degrees of true or false to it. So the difference between fuzzy logic and simple logic is just yes or no. But then fuzzy logic has degrees of yes or no, or degrees of true and false. So fuzzy logic has a lot more options. And really the best way to explain this, if you look down here, simple logic gives a player just two outcomes. Fuzzy logic gives variable outcomes according to what the player does. So this is really the best explanation down below here about simple logic and fuzzy logic. Hey, page 11, fuzzy logic discussion. We're not doing those, so we'll skip to that. Page 12, play testing and physical prototyping. So the idea about prototypes is you need to build a prototype of a game called a storyboard to get your ideas down. And then once those ideas come down, then you start building it with the computer. Then you have a different level of prototype that you do eventually. But the first early prototype is a storyboard. So you can see right here, a prototype is a storyboard with a sequence of drawings that show the levels of the game or different scenes or different goals. This is going to be one of your assignments, is to do a storyboard activity of the game that you thought about back in the game elements unit. So the idea here is that you have some sketches, some drawings of what your game will look like. Because then the game developers, the ones that will computerize it and everything, they need to see your concepts, your ideas, so then they can start putting them into a real game. So you do a storyboard for your prototype, and you see that some prototypes they're done digitally. Sometimes people might use cardboard cutouts as prototypes for their game. So there are a variety of ways that can be done. If I go back to the write-up, let's see what is a game prototype. So for us, a game prototype is really a model of what the game will look like. So game prototype is a model of what the game will look like. And it talks right here, game development has pre-production phase known as prototyping, but really prototype is the model of what the game will look like. Page 13 talks more about prototyping and the importance of those. I don't remember if I had another Class Connect write-up question. Let's see. Yes, explain how prototyping is important in game design. And that's for 2 questions. That's for like questions 6 and 7. So what you need to do for that one, you need to read pages, make sure you pay attention to pages 12 and 13 both. This talks all about prototyping. Then you answer that question. So since it counts for 2 answers, 2 questions, then I expect a pretty good paragraph of what prototyping is and the importance of it. Page 14, storyboard assignment. Now this says choose an older game that's not too complicated and a kid-friendly game. So it could be a game like Pac-Man or Centipede or something like that. And what you're going to do, you're going to make notes, the general rules of it, the characters, the environment, the goals, the progression of the levels. And then you're going to create a storyboard for the game that you chose. You can do it in a PowerPoint or use, an OpenOffice has a presentation software but you're going to use a presentation software to do it, so a PowerPoint or an OpenOffice presentation. So you're going to sketch out the characters in the environment, don't just copy and paste. So you're going to take these, you're going to think about these basic ideas, and you're going to sketch the storyboard. And what I expect is probably three diagrams at the least. So 3 storyboard diagrams, so you'll end up with 3 sketches you make, and each one of those might be on a PowerPoint slide. So it's the prototype storyboard for the game you chose above for your uncomplicated, simple game. Again, like Pac-Man, Centipede, whatever other simple games that are out there. And the storyboard is going to be the picture of that game. A little practice activity for rules and prototyping, a matching activity, go through that. And finally, the rules quiz. And of course, as always, I have the quiz previews right over here. So about 5 multiple choice questions in this quiz. So make sure you do well on that. I don't let you redo quizzes. Okay, section B. Now we're going to look at levels. So we're jumping into section B, and let's go to the write-up. And the write-up says, what is the purpose of levels in games? So make sure we answer that. So the levels, the introduction to levels. So in this section, we're going to comprehend what level design is and understand level techniques. So level designing. And let me make sure. Actually, here's the answer to that first question. The purpose of levels is to provide harder challenges as the gameplay progresses. So that's the purpose of levels. That was the answer to Class Connect Write-Up question 8. So the purpose of levels is to provide harder challenges as gameplay progresses. A level designing. And let's go to the write-up. And on page 3, list some factors that decide a level's duration. Explain how nonlinear levels might work in games. So on this, you can watch this presentation. You can hit start to watch the presentation, or you can go down here for the script of it. So as you look at this, it talks all about levels. You can see that gameplay is broken down into fragments called levels, and you all know about levels in games, don't you? And while designing game levels, a number of factors have to be taken into consideration. And it also says that most games follow a linear flow, just going straight ahead essentially, but some might be non-linear, where you go off to the sides and different things like that. So there are really lots of differences in games these days. As I move down, so this talks about gameplay and how you proceed through games based on goals and different levels. But levels duration, meaning how long you are in the level before you move to another level or reach the goals, solve the problems. Here are some of the factors: the difficulty level of the game, the importance of the level in the game's plot. So if a plot of a game, if level 1 is really important for the plot of the game, then you'll probably be in level 1 for a long time based on the way the game is played. Then finally, the phase of the plot at which the level covers. So these are 3 reasons or 3 ideas that affect the duration of different levels in a game. As you move down, there's a lot more about the game time, like real-time games, the way that they progress. Some game time might be slower or faster than real time. The physical environments of the game, that's called the space of the game. So you could have different levels might have larger maps, particularly when you first start a game. Looking at the main plot, you'd have a larger map, right? Some games have different levels that have different camera angles and perspectives. So one level you might be like a first person, second level you might be third person. First person shooter games, then you're probably first person point of view the whole way, right? Then finally it starts talking more about other leveling techniques, get into exaggerated virtual reality at some levels, so you get to really higher leveling games that are extremely new generation, I guess. And artificial intelligence, they start build on the higher levels. They put some of those greater effects in. Then finally, starts talking about the nonlinear level down here. Nonlinear levels, those are levels that branch out in different combinations, and that depends on the way people play the game. So nonlinear levels are designed to branch out depending on what people do as they play the game. So that was the question to the last Class Connect write-up, or the answer to the last Class Connect write-up question. Page 4, little practice activity for level techniques. So see if you can do that matching activity, see how well you can do. A little practical activity, here's a game called Zuma. You're not going to do any work on this, but here's a chart that you can kind of organize your thoughts as you play that Zuma game. And that may help you out a little bit as you start to design more on your own game. So keep that in mind. And finally, the big assignment for this unit is the game mechanics implementation. So of course what you're going to do, we've talked about prototype and storyboard and level games and mechanics. So in this one you're going to use the game that you thought of back in the game elements unit, the one you originally designed, your first game design, and you're going to create a prototype storyboard. PowerPoint or another presentation software. So you can do PowerPoint or the presentation software that comes with OpenOffice, or you can do an online presentation program if you want, but it needs to be done in as a presentation. So you're going to draw your characters and your environments, a different slide for each level. So if your game has 4 levels, then you're going to have 4 different slides. And just because your game only has 1 level does not mean you only have 1 slide. You need to do some extra work on this. I'm not going to give 100 points to somebody that does 20 points worth of work that turns in a piece of junk. So you're going back at the game that you started in the game elements unit, and you're expanding on that by designing your prototype storyboard. And as you do your storyboard with your image that you draw, your sketch you draw, then you're going to put notes in that section talking about lots of these different things. So if I were doing this, I would have 5 slides. And my first slide is going to be just the name of the game, but it's going to be a picture, might be like the opening picture of the game. And then I'm going to have, and also I'll have a sketch for that. Then the next slide is the basic story of the game, and I'll have a sketch for that. And the next slide talks about the gameplay constraints, the rules of the game. And that's what we talked about in this unit, the gameplay constraints in section A. So that'll have another sketch or another picture. Then you'll have goals. What are the goals of the game? And that'll have some pictures. And then finally, level designing. What are the levels of your game? So you're going to have some different sketches, and I'm not looking for fantastic artwork in this, but I do want it to show that you took your time to create this the way one should. Because the idea here is that you're designing a game, you have a game idea in your mind, and you're doing all of this work in hopes that maybe some game design company might want to take you up on buying your game from you someday. So you need to present it properly. So again, this is going to be done in PowerPoint or another presentation software. You're going to have sketches of your game, sketches of different levels of your game, all types of things with this. And on each of these slides, you're going to have some notes describing the levels, the goals of the levels, the sound effects you might have, the music, the narration, etc. So this allows you to take your game elements that you started early on, the basic game design, and expand it into the prototype. So that's what this is all about. And then of course, as always, actually we don't have a exam in this unit, so that's all for you. That's straight up all the work you have. We'll look back at the Class Connect write-up just to make sure nonlinear level works. We talked about that. So we fixed all that. The one thing I do need to fix though, I had a mistake on this one question. This actually is down here. This was page 1. So that's all I have for you. So the work for this week. We'll go back to the course home area, to the announcement for the week's work. Week 5. So you have all of this, and again, the Class Connect write-up that you do, the finishing plan, and let me just take a quick shot. Here's the finishing plan right here. So you can see in the finishing plan, you're going to answer these 7 questions. So you just copy all this, paste into the text area of the Dropbox. The first question, what is your current grade percentage? So 58.2%, whatever it is. And how many points have you earned so far? I want both of those. What grade percentage do you want? Do you want 80% to get a B? How many total overall points will you need to earn that grade? So if you want an 80%, how many points overall will you need? Question 4, how many more points do you need on top of the points you've already earned to get to that grade level you want? At least 5 assignments you'll do the rest of the semester, and how many points each is worth? Total days there are from the day you do this work until March 15th, which is the last day, and hours per week. That's an easy 50 points. Okay, that's all I have for you. That's week 5 work. It's all about the gameplay unit. So thanks for watching. I look forward to your work coming in. Bye.